My guest today is Tonya Herbert of Thin Red Line Decon. After initially working for an architectural firm specialising in the design of fire stations, emergency centres and police stations, Tonya now owns and runs Thin Red Line Decon, a US-based company encompassing responder wipes and Florida PPE services, specialising in decontamination and maintenance of firefighter PPE and the supply of products such as Decon wipes, shampoo and on-scene decon in the form of storm stick decon. Tonya also works alongside Healthy Firefighters, the pioneers of the Scaleftia model, a collaborative project aimed at preventing occupational health hazards among firefighters. Now adopted as the standard in 17 European countries, the Healthy Firefighters project provides concise decontamination protocols which can improve firefighters' health and well-being. In this episode, Tonya and I discuss cancer prevention strategies, decon, PFAS, fire station design and layout, firefighter health, culture in the fire service, building good habits and breaking bad ones, and the psychology of human behaviour. Tonya is a huge advocate for firefighter health and well-being, and her passion for supporting firefighters and their families is plain to see. Before we get into the episode, I'd just like to ask you to please leave a rating and or review on whichever platform you listen to the podcast, as this will really help to boost the podcast and increase the audience. Anyway, here we go with episode 2, Change Your Habit, Make a Habit, with Tonya Herbert. I'll hand over to Tonya to introduce herself and tell you a bit about her background, how you got involved with the fire service, Tonya, and where your work has progressed to today.
Absolutely. Thanks, James, for having me on. I really appreciate it. So my name is Tonya Herbert. I am the owner of Thin Red Line Decon. I am also the owner of Florida PPE Services, which is a turnout gear maintenance company. So I got into this arena about 11 years ago. I used to work for an architectural firm that specializes in the design of fire stations and other emergency operations centers, police facilities, etc. And they would design fire stations all over the country. That was all that they did. And in 2014, we were preparing for an interview with a client in the state of Florida. And one of the questions for the interview was, how would you design the station to control contaminants from being brought back in the living quarters? And this was new to us. We didn't understand why they were asking the question. So I got put in charge of researching it and found out about the cancer epidemic in the fire service and was just astounded. The more I dug into it, the more horrifying it became for me. And shortly, right around that time, the Firefighter Cancer Support Network released a white paper in conjunction with NIOSH. And at the end of the report was 13 things that you could do to minimize your risk. And one of the things on the list was to use baby wipes or wet naps on scene. So I just took the report and started sharing it with all of the fire chiefs that I'd gotten to know across the country. You know, hey, have you seen this? Are you aware of the cancer epidemic? What are you doing about it? And one of the chiefs that I talked to he had taken over as chief of a department, and within the first year had buried 2 members from cancer. Both had not a rare cancer, but unusual cancer, colon cancer, for their age bracket. Members were under the age of 50, and both had been in the same industrial fire about 8 years earlier. So he thought that the cancer that they had was related to the job.
So specifically back to one incident, potentially?
He thought so, yes. It was a large industrial fire. You know, it's really hard to ascertain exactly what call you go on may be the result of it. But this was, I guess, a very toxic fire. And because they had both been on it, it was colon cancer. That's very unusual for someone under the age of 50. So he felt like it was related. So we, looked over the list, and one of the things that was on there was using wet naps or baby wipes to clean up on scene. And I said, well, that seems like a really easy thing to do. Are you guys doing that? And he said, well, my guys have tried baby's wipes, but, they are too small. They shred, they ball up, they leave fuzzies on a 5 o'clock shadow. And my guys really don't want to smell like a baby's butt when they're done. So I thought, okay, well, there's got to be something else on the market. So I just started looking for him and found a couple of products that weren't necessarily designed for the fire service, but I thought they might work. Sent them to his guys to try out, and nothing was really what they were looking for. So I guess about 8 months had gone by, and he just started bugging me, hey, why don't we make a wipe? And I said, I know nothing about making wipes. I have a business degree. And he just kept at it and kept at it. And then I had a fortuitous conversation with my brother's new father-in-law. He had gotten married, and his father-in-law is an epidemiologist and owns several biomedical firms. And I was telling him about the cancer epidemic and what I was hoping to achieve. And he said, oh, I know what you need to do. And so he set us on a direction with the formulation and the fabric and ingredients and what we should use and not use. And one of the things that he talked about was not using a wipe with aloe or alcohol, because both of those are penetration enhancers. So we ended up developing a wipe, and in 2016, we launched Responder Wipes. We started with an extra large wipe because after beta testing on some firefighters, we found that they would use one extra large wipe and wipe off really well, but they wouldn't necessarily open 2 or 3 packs of smaller wipes to wipe down. So started with a really large wipe that was really thick and did a great job. So started that company in 2016. And in end of 2017, I left the architectural firm that I was working for, and I went to work for the National Association of State Fire Marshals here in the U.S. Every state has one fire marshal that is kind of the chief fire officer for the state. And this organization represented each of those 50 state fire marshals. So really got my hands deep into the fire service and had the opportunity to start to connect with a lot more researchers and senior fire officials and really start to understand more about the epidemic. Did that for about not quite 2 years. And then in 2019, I went full-time with Responder Wipes. And I started developing another product. I was working on Responder Wash, which is an activated charcoal shampoo body wash, and was just about to start production in March of 2020. And what happened in March of 2020?
That's bad timing, isn't it?
Yep. And so the manufacturer said, hold up, we are converting to doing nothing but making hand sanitizer. We will not be able to make your body wash right now.
Of course. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that. Yeah.
So the body wash got put on hold for a little bit, but right about the same time, right actually before COVID, everybody locked down, we had done a live burn at a conference here in Orlando, the Orlando Fire Conference. And one of the instructors, a female, she always worked the hoarder can at the conference. So she'd spend 2 days in just a heavy, heavy smoke environment.
The what? Sorry, what was that?
A hoarder can, a training canister or container that they pretend like someone's a hoarder.
Wow, yeah, we
Yeah.
don't. I don't think we actually have anything like that here.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. We do live burns and stuff, but nothing that I'm aware of that simulates a hoarder. That's well, interesting.
Well, this conference, if you ever have the opportunity to come to the Orlando Fire Conference, it's a phenomenal world-class conference, and they do a lot of different scenarios, but training for hoarder fires was one of them. And so after spending 2 days in a container filled with household goods and synthetics and, obviously a very intense smoke environment, her hair would smell terrible. She said it would take her 2 weeks to get the smoke smell out of her hair. And so we were working on the body wash, and she was kind of my guinea pig for it. But at the same time, she said, hey, do you know of anybody that would open a gear maintenance center here in Orlando? We're tired of shipping our gear out. At the time, there was nothing local. And so they were shipping all of their turnout gear a couple of hours away to be repaired. So I thought, well, that kind of goes along with what I'm already doing, keeping firefighters healthy. So in 2020, I worked with a consultant, and I started Florida PPE Services. So it was full time into everything related to decontamination. So from having a background in designing fire stations to, how you would decontaminate in a fire station, to decontaminating individual firefighters, to now decontaminating the gear. It kind of became full circle and encompassed everything.
It was sounds like it was kind of perfectly set up for it, really. If the background in design and architecture and then station design and then having the relative that was an epidemiologist, it kind of sounds like it all just fell into place really well, actually. And then you've just kind of built it from there, haven't you? It's amazing, really.
Well, and I have to tell you have to promise not to laugh, but when the chief first approached me about making wipes, I kept saying, no, 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 no. And finally, I had a dream one night and I saw the word fire in real big red letters. And I turned away from it and I saw the letters again. And a voice said, this is your essence. This is at your core. Why do you keep turning away from it?
That's very specific, that, isn't it?
It was very specific. So I woke up and thought, okay, I guess I'm going to try and figure this out. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've definitely done that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So in August of 2022, I have all of these, I had responder wipes, responder wash. I had the turnout gear cleaning business. And before I had actually gotten into the turnout gear cleaning business, I partnered with Healthy Firefighters, which is the Swedish model for decontamination. It's called the Skellefteå model.
Yeah, I've come across it. I think it was you that actually put me onto that a few years ago, to be honest.
Yeah, their protocol is light years ahead of any place else that I've seen. So I had the opportunity to meet with Stefan Magnuson and David Hultman, the founders of Healthy Firefighters. And through that protocol, a group over there developed bags to encapsulate dirty turnout gear. And they were also speaking here in the U.S. So I worked with them to help them bring their protocol to the U.S. And I was also connected with the bag manufacturer and had the opportunity to represent and be the dealer for the bags here in the United States. So I now had wipes, wash, the bags, and then I started finding other products that I thought would be great in the decontamination arena. So I decided to change the name of the company. It was really hard selling other products under the name Responder Wipes. So in 2022, I changed the name to Thin Red Line Decon so I could offer the full suite of products. So besides the wipes, the wash, the bags, we are also a dealer for a device called the Storm Stick, which is an on-scene decon rinse system developed by a Phoenix firefighter. We're also a dealer for the Clean Getaway portable hose washer. So it is a scrubbing device that will allow you to scrub up to a 3-inch hose line on scene. So you clean the hose line on scene. You don't put dirty hose over your shoulder and load it and take it back to the station.
So that's something that you attach that to the fire engine on scene, do you, and clean it all there?
Yes.
Yeah. We could. I think we could learn a thing or two from what you're doing, to be honest. I mean, even down to the bags, where still, if you go from service to service, the way kit is transported, I would imagine differs, and the standards will be massively different depending on where you are.
Well, and speaking of standards, so in 2020, the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, which is the standard the U.S. follows for the fire service, updated their standard on the selection, care, and maintenance of turnout gear and included preliminary exposure reduction as a requirement of the standard. So that's what they call on-scene decon or gross decon. It's preliminary exposure reduction.
So that's actually in policy, is it, that procedure?
It is. It is
right.
Part of 1951, Chapter 7 on cleaning. So once it became part of the standard, a lot of the departments started to really understand how necessary this was. One of the other things that also has helped move this forward in the United States is cancer presumption laws. So a lot of the states did not recognize cancer as a job-related illness. And unfortunately, with cancer, it's a synergistic effect. You may not know specifically what incident you got your cancer from. So trying to go back and prove It was from January 10th, 1982 on this fire is next to impossible. So every state in the United States now, it took many years, but every state in the United States now has some sort of cancer legislation. Some is much better than others. Some have a comprehensive list of cancers that they will cover that are presumed to come from the job. Some do not. But they're making improvements, and you had to start somewhere. And then for the United States, there are two states, California and Texas, both treat the NFPA 1851 standard as law. So you must abide fully by 1851 if you are a fire department in the state of California or the state of Texas. Yeah.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah. And with all of that, we're seeing a slow change. But as I'm sure is the same in the UK, I say it's like turning a cruise ship in a pool. It happens very, very slowly and very deliberately.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And I think for the ones that are pushing it, it's such an uphill battle. And I mean, that's great that you've got the presumptive legislation. That's something that we're still fighting for over here, and we still haven't got that. And you will get some will argue that there isn't a link between firefighting and cancer, and they'll dispute it. And I think the fact that there isn't any legislation over here, it means that there's actually no obligation for them to implement anything, really. A lot of it over here is driven by the Fire Brigades Union and implemented from the ground up. And I mean, there has been a lot of change in the last few years, and there are a lot of brigades that are putting stuff in place and are making a big effort and really driving it. But it's such a slow process, and without that legislation, like you say, it's just the link is, you just can't prove it, can you, really? And it's harder to get the support without it, really.
Well, and one of the other big things that happened was, I believe it was June of 2023, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, they are the world governing body on what gets designated as being carcinogenic or not. And there's 4 levels. Group 1 means it is a known carcinogen. Group 2A is a probable carcinogen. Group 2B is a possible carcinogen, and then Group 3 is non-carcinogenic. They originally classified the occupation of firefighting as a Group 2B possible carcinogen. Back in June of 2023, after reviewing decades worth of studies, they reclassified it, and it is now a Group 1 known carcinogen. So the occupation of firefighting is a known carcinogen. This comes from a multitude of things. It's not just what you're exposed to, but shift work and sleep deprivation and the stress of the job, all of it is related, but they have reclassified it. So that was really what I think kind of tipped things here in the United States, was once it was reclassified, a lot of the states, I think, just kind of realized that it was going to be an uphill battle to not have some sort of presumptive coverage.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we're still a little bit behind in that area. Unfortunately, I think they're dragging the feet with it a bit over here, but hopefully we'll follow suit and we won't be far behind you. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well, and here too, a lot of times we see that it's the younger generation of firefighters that want to stay healthy, and they're the ones that are advocating for and pushing and adopting new protocols, new standards, and not accepting, well, this is just part of the job.
Yeah,
so
definitely. I think it's about getting that message across right at the start, right, rather than after 20 years in the case for some people, and that's when the difficulties come in, I think, isn't it? Trying to get people to change after that amount of time.
Well, and here's the scary statistic too. I think it was estimated by the Firefighter Cancer Support Network that 25% of retirees die within the first 5 years of their retirement.
Oh, the first 5 years.
Yeah.
God, that's a US statistic, is it?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. I wouldn't know what it is over here, but yeah.
I mean, that's the whole goal, is to get to retirement and enjoy it, and then that's not happening.
That's what I say, really. You want to set yourself up for a long, healthy retirement, don't you? And all the little things that we we like to ignore and that we like to look away from, they all stack up over time, and they will make the big difference, I think. And yeah, nobody wants to work 35 years and then have a retirement of, however long. Ideally, your retirement wants to be longer than your career, but that's maybe unrealistic. But yeah, that's not a good statistic.
Well, and you just mentioned something too, stacking things. All the little things stack up. I don't know if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I have actually, yeah. Great book, yeah.
Love the book. One of my favorite books, nonfiction books. The first time I read it, I realized that a meditation and journaling practice that I had tried for years to make a habit, I had actually finally made it a habit because I unknowingly did the steps in the book. And so I was like, okay, I know this works. I'm proof that it works. So I went back and read it again for business. And as I was reading it for business, I thought, wow, I think this applies to the fire service and changing habits in the fire service. So I reached out to a couple of chiefs that I knew that had read the book and said, hey, do you think this translates? And could we use this strategy for implementing a preliminary exposure reduction protocol? And they're like, yes. I said, great. Somebody needs to write an article about this. And they all pointed their fingers at me and said, you. I was like, oh, okay, wait a second. So I did. I ended up writing an article. I had several chief officers peer review it, and it's subsequently been published in a couple of publications. Crackle Magazine has it online. And the International Fire and Safety Journal also did a printed version of it. But it really talks about how you can change a habit and make a habit of on-scene decon and what areas might be sticking points and suggestions for overcoming those sticking points. So I highly, highly recommend any of your listeners, if they have not read the book, to pick it up and read it.
Great. And that article is available on Crackle Magazine, and where was the other place?
The International Fire and Safety Journal also did a version of it, a printed version of it.
Right,
so great. I can give you links to it.
That'd be great. I'll have a read of that as well, actually.
Yeah.
I think that is one of the hardest things to change in this job is bad habits, really. Because, we all have them. It's just, it's difficult to break them sometimes, isn't it?
Well, and part of the reason is, especially in this industry, is because of what they call normalization of deviance. It means there's no catastrophic consequence for a bad behavior. And so therefore, there's not as much motivation to stop that bad behavior. The risk that you take becomes normalized over an extended period of time because nothing catastrophic happened to you. So between that and the length of time it takes to usually contract cancer, again, it's hard to tie it back to a particular incident. Both of those factors make this more challenging to make it a habit.
Yeah, do you know what? My last episode was with a guy called Chris Selleck, and he pretty much said the same thing. It's that if that consequence isn't right in front of you, you're less likely to do something, aren't you?
Yes, absolutely.
To fix it, really. It's human nature, isn't it? And the path of least resistance. And I think, it's just we're very flawed, I think, aren't we, as a species, really? And we are our own worst enemy sometimes.
Yes. Well, and there's a saying from a chief here in the U.S.: 2 things firefighters hate: change and the way things are.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So trying to change a habit, but the brain processes about 90% of its information visually. So if you can set your environment up with visual cues, that can be one of the easy things to do to make a habit stick. One of the things I did was to develop a sticker that says, "Did you decon?" And you put it someplace where you're going to see it. So a lot of my departments, they'll put it on the company officer's door. So when he opens the door to get back into the engine to go back to the station, that sticker is right there. And it's, oh, wait, hold on, let's go back. We got to, decon. Or, putting it in the door before you go into the living quarters. Or my arson investigators put it on their laptop. So when they get back in their car and they go to start typing their report, they see that sticker. So having a visual cue is one of the easiest things that you can do. And then priming your environment, having everything set and ready to go. One of the things that they've done here in the United States is a decontamination bucket. So they'll take a 5-gallon bucket and they'll put hose in it, like a garden hose, detergent, a scrub brush, trash bags for bagging dirty gear, and wipes. And they'll have that bucket there. And the pump operator, it will be his job to get that bucket ready and use that to decontaminate people, do a preliminary exposure reduction when they come out of the fire scene.
We have a similar setup, really. We have like a decon bag where we've got wipes and dust masks and gloves, and we've got other, attachments for the hose and whatever else that we can use. And we will, what we should do, and I think we're still trying to get everybody to actually adhere to it, but what it's coming recently, like you say, you come out of a fire, you disrobe your kit, and then you're cleaning the set, you're cleaning yourself off with the wipes, and you're kind of removing as much of those contaminants from your skin as you can. And if you are that contaminated, your fire kit is pretty contaminated, we will actually go out of service as well until we get back, and then we'll shower when we get back. So I think that's, positive thing in my opinion. It's a positive step.
There's been multiple studies out now that have shown absorption through the skin is the greatest route of exposure for the toxins. You basically have inhalation, ingestion, so if you actually ate or drank something, if your hands were dirty, and then absorption. And absorption has been shown to be the greatest route of exposure for you. So doing everything you can to minimize that. And then, like you said, taking a shower when you get back as soon as possible, washing your kit, washing your station wear, your clothes that you're wearing underneath, all of that is really important. And one of the things, and they have done studies now that have shown that these mitigation strategies work. The University of Arizona did a study with Tucson Fire Department and Glendale Fire Department. And what they did was they measured urinary biomarkers, the PAHs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which are the bad chemicals. They measured those in the urine as firefighters came on shift, after a call, and then at the end of the shift. So what they wanted to do was to track those PAHs in the urinary biomarkers to see what happened after a fire. And obviously there was a significant increase after a fire. And then what they did was they implemented mitigation strategies, including wiping off on scene, making sure they were in full PPE, showering, using saunas. And then they looked at each of the positions, every personnel, and what happened to the urinary biomarkers once they put in mitigation strategies in place. The interesting thing was the greatest reduction in urinary biomarkers came with the pump operators after they had them go on air. So a lot of the engineers, operate as a pump operator, and they won't be on air. They may or may not be in full PPE, but once they had them go on air, their PAHs dropped 40%.
That's insane. That's a huge statistic. So that's just from, obviously, they're outside, and they're just basically, that's just from standing sort of in the general kind of area of the fire.
It's from that, and also the diesel with the engine still running.
Of course, the diesel emissions, yeah, of course.
So that was significant, but all of them had reductions in PAHs. Every position had reduction in PAHs with the on-scene wipe down, and there was limited evidence with the sauna, and it's not that it didn't show a reduction, but the sample size, only a few firefighters did it. And so the sample size wasn't statistically large enough for them to have a correlation between the sauna and the reduction in it. So there still needs to be some more study on that. From the researchers that I've talked to about saunas, there is a little bit of concern in how you use it and the type of sauna that you do. From what I understand, the body, your kidneys are what removes the most amount of toxins from your body through urine and feces. So it removes, I want to say, about 92% of the toxins that are in your body. Well, what happens is when you come out of a fire, your core body temperature is elevated and your kidneys cannot function as well when you're in an elevated body temperature state. So if you then immediately go back to the station and get into a hot sauna and try and exercise or something else to sweat out the toxins, that's only removing a very small percentage of the toxins that way. But you're putting your kidneys back into a state where it's harder for them to do their job. So what they've said is if you want to use a sauna, come back, take a cold shower, cool off, and make sure your body core temperature comes all the way back to a normal level before you put it back into an elevated temperature state in a sauna. So, and a lot of people say, well, the Swedes use saunas all the time. They don't use it for detoxing. They use it as an overall wellness part of their program. So they use them a little differently than we do here in the United States. So, but there's still a lot of research that needs to be done on the saunas. In the meantime, if you're going to use them, just like I said, make sure that you're really cooling down and allowing your core body temperature to come back down to a normal state.
And is that taking a cool shower? Would that be like your first shower that you're using to decontaminate as well? Because I read something recently about making sure that when you are having a shower to decontaminate, that the shower's not too hot.
Correct.
Is that because you'll further absorb what's already on you?
You're opening your pores. So if you take a cold shower, your pores are going to close, and that will help stop anything else from being absorbed. The North Carolina State University has done some preliminary research on what absorbs and how much absorbs and whether wipes work or not. They tested 4 different wipes. My wipes were one of the ones that were tested. And they, for the most part, except for, I think in one of the tests, they did a wet paper towel. Most of them did a really good job of removing the contaminants. What's hard to assess is the larger the particles, the harder they are to absorb into your skin. So anything like a heavy metal or anything that has a high molecular weight is not going to absorb into your skin as fast. So those are the ones that you have a better chance of closing the pores, wiping off, and getting that off as quickly as possible.
Right, and is that dependent on what you're contaminated with?
Yes.
Then basically,
yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I've not even thought about that, to be honest.
You think it's just a matter of soot goes into your skin, but it's all based on molecular weight and what the contaminant is. But like I said, there has been some indication that they know that aloe and alcohol are both penetration enhancers. They're used to pre-treat skin dermally before you apply medication, if you're applying medicine dermally. So if possible, try and avoid any wipes that have something like that in them. But so they know that this works. The mitigation strategies work. And it's really just a matter of, are you cleaning up on scene? Are you cleaning your kit afterwards? And the way the standard here is in the U.S. with NFPA 1851, if you are exposed to products of combustion, your turnout gear should be cleaned. So dumpster fire, kitchen fire, room and contents, it doesn't matter. Your gear should be cleaned. And that's been pretty controversial over here.
Yeah, same here, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if it doesn't look contaminated, I think my general rule is if it smells smoky, I'll change it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good point too. If you wash your gear and it still smells, it's not clean. Wash it again.
Yeah, good point.
And now we're really getting into, I don't know how it is in the UK, but the big topic here in the United States is PFAS and turnout gear.
Yeah, so that's not as much on the radar over here. I don't think I have heard some noise about that recently, but my knowledge on that in terms of UK PPE is pretty limited, really. I wouldn't know much about that, to be honest.
So for your listeners who may or may not know about it, PFAS stands for per and polyfluoral alkylated substances. It's an umbrella of about, I want to say, 13,000 man-made compounds, and they're called forever chemicals because they don't break down. There is PFAS in literally everything in your environment. My carpet has a stain-resistant coating on it. Anything that is non-stick, Teflon, anything that is water-resistant, anything that's stain-resistant, grease-resistant. PFAS is literally in everything. Your coffee cup that, from Starbucks, your wrapper on a burger, the paper inside a pizza box, popcorn bags, dental floss. It's everywhere. And I think the estimate is 95% of the population has detectable levels of PFAS in their bloodstream. There are some that are known carcinogens, and that's a concern. So here in the United States, there is PFAS in the outer shell material in the form of a Teflon coating on the fibers of the outer shell. And so back in about 2020...
This is on the fire kit on the turnout gear, is it?
Yes.
Right,
yes.
Yeah.
On the outer shell, the outermost layer. It provides a fluid repellency so that fluids are not going to penetrate the outer shell, and especially flammable fluids, but also steam. In about 2020, manufacturers started removing the PFAS, the Teflon coating, from the fibers and substituting it with a wax or silicone coating instead. But what we're seeing is a couple of things. First of all, those silicone or wax coatings are not as durable. They end up wearing off. They also are not as oil resistant. So if you have hydraulic fluid or diesel fuel that absorbs that gets on the outer shell material, it can catch fire and not self-extinguish like a coating with Teflon would have. The Teflon coating would have made sure that the hazardous fluid did not absorb into the fiber. So it would just extinguish, in a matter of seconds. With the new coatings, that doesn't happen. It will catch fire and it will burn and burn and burn. So you have that, then the coatings are wearing off, and so particulates are penetrating deeper into the fibers, and it's harder to get the kits clean. And the Teflon coating's not on there, so fibers will rub up against each other, and they'll abrade, and the material wears out faster.
Right, okay.
So here in the United States, we're supposed to have a 10-year lifespan on turnout gear, and most departments will expect that their turnout gear is going to last 10 years. Coatings, it's not going to. So you're doing a great job. You're doing good by getting PFAS out of turnout gear material, but you're causing other unintended consequences.
Yes, it's a bit of a trade-off, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
Would it be possible for that wax coating to be reapplied, sort of at periodic intervals?
Yes. So it's not readily available right now, but there is some technology with some of the LCO2, liquid CO2 cleaning machines. I think the LCO2 cleaning is very prevalent in Europe, not so much here in the US.
Yeah, I've come across that actually. It's not in use much here. I think, is it UK company? I think it might be there's a UK company that does it, I think.
Okay.
But I think it's quite a recent addition over here.
Europe is using it a lot more than the United States. There's a company in Belgium, and I think there was one in Germany maybe, but their machines can reimpregnate the durable water repellency on turnout gear. So that is a possibility. I'm just trying to educate all my departments over here that their turnout gear is probably not going to last 10 years, and it may not provide them the level of protection that they're used to. So they need to understand when they get new gear in, if it doesn't have that PFAS finish, they better understand what the limitations of their gear is for protecting them from hazardous fluids.
Yeah, because I guess it could deteriorate and you might not even know, really.
Yeah, and if North Carolina State University, again, they're a major research hub here in the U.S., they've got some studies online now that show how long the flame lasts when the gear's been exposed to diesel and hydraulic, and it's much longer than it was with the PFAS finish. So I have a feeling you guys will be hearing about this more pretty soon because it's a global phenomenon to get rid of PFAS in different environments.
Yeah, I think so. There has been a bit of chatter about it lately, I think. We're looking into foams is a big one for us at the moment. I think the foam stocks are getting overhauled at the moment because of the chemicals in them, and they're going to more environmentally friendly products and stuff. So that's something that is being looked into. And again, the FBU are doing a bit of research with the University of Central Lancashire into levels of toxins in firefighters' blood. So I think we're turning a corner. We're getting there.
One of the things that has the most amount of PFAS in it is the AFFF, the firefighting foam.
Yeah, that's what we have on the trucks at the moment.
Yeah, that's been banned here in the United States. Oh, I'm sorry, it hasn't been banned. Heavily regulated.
Right, yeah,
There's still
okay.
certain instances when you have to use it because it's about the only thing that works.
Yeah.
But it is very heavily regulated, and it's used primarily in ARFs and aircraft fires, and that's about it.
It's regulated here. We're not allowed to train with it, and there's if we need to use it, we use it. But yeah, it is regulated, and then we'll have to contain it and whatever else. So yeah, maybe pretty similar actually.
Yeah. So, but it's been interesting to see the change in culture with cleaning gear also, because I'm sure like you all, our firefighters think that if they're dirty, they look like they know what they're doing. And, it's the old salty firefighter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a worldwide one that I think, unfortunately, we do seem to be, I think we do seem to be making it a bit of progress in that area, and that mentality is fading, fortunately, but it definitely still exists. It's a big bugbear for me. That really gets on my nerves, that one.
Your gear will off-gas for 72 hours after you're in a fire. So when you take it back to the station, and if you're anything like U.S. firefighters, a lot of times they'll work at another station, they'll work overtime, or they'll cover somebody else's shift that's on vacation, they'll float. They'll throw their gear in the back of their car, and they'll have their wife and kids in the car with them, and the gear is off-gassing in the car. So that's one of the things that I've pushed, especially with the bags that we have from Sweden. Two of the bags that they've designed have welded seams and gas-tight zippers. Yeah. So I'm encouraging people to either use those, or if you don't use those, use a storage container with a snap-tight lid, or a garbage bag that you twist and gooseneck and tape, and just do something to make sure that your gear is not off-gassing, either in your personal vehicle, or if you're in a command vehicle, if you're a chief and you're, driving yourself and you've got your gear. However you transport your gear, make sure that your gear is not off-gassing, and then clean your gear. You've got to clean your gear.
Yeah, so you're talking about specifically contaminated fire kit in that sense, because what about kit that people would class as clean? Because, I mean, if I've got to transport my kit, even if it's,
quote unquote clean.
Yeah, clean, it's not really clean, is it? It's still this residual contaminants and whatever. So what would you recommend in that case? Would you recommend the same method?
Yes. I recommend you always transport gear that way, and that's the way. So the NFPA 1851 standard, which is the one that I was referencing, it is a new version of it is coming out this year, sometime between May and August. There's some administrative things going on with it, so it hasn't been released yet. But that's one of the updates in the new standard, is to make sure that you are transporting your gear in a controlled environment. I have a customer here in Florida that here in the U.S., every firefighter has a second job. And one in particular did lawn maintenance. So he would spray pesticides in yards. He was carrying a 5-gallon container of pesticide in the back of his pickup truck, and he threw his turnout gear, his coat, his pants, and then his wildland gear in the back of the truck with a couple pairs of gloves. The bucket of pesticide leaked all over his turnout gear. Could not be washed. The gear had to be condemned and thrown away because they couldn't get the pesticide out.
Yeah.
So if he had just had it in a storage container or a bag or a garbage bag or something, $5,000 worth of turnout gear would have been saved.
Yeah, that's quite a
So
that's
the
quite a
other
way to
thing
put it.
too is sunlight affects turnout gear. So storing gear in sunlight can degrade gear. The Nomex and Kevlar and PBI fibers that are in turnout gear, UV light will degrade those. So over time, the fibers just end up almost melting. And you can take the outer shell material, which should be, tear resistant, and literally just shred it. So when you're storing your gear, make sure that you are storing it out of sunlight. Direct or indirect UV light can degrade turnout gear. So even fluorescent lights can degrade the outer shell and the moisture barrier and thermal liner of turnout gear. So storage is critical when you're transporting it, when you're storing it at the station. We're here in Florida, so a lot of our fire stations have glass doors, or they'll leave the apparatus bay doors open during the day, and that sunlight just pours in.
Yeah, same here, really. Yeah.
So do you all have a lot of lockers or gear storage in your apparatus bays?
Nope, not anymore. It's in a separate
Okay,
room now. So
good.
yeah, it's a separate room where we've got rows of pegs and racks and whatever. Fortunately, it's quite a dark room actually. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it should
I
be.
would say that might be intentional, but it's probably coincidental.
We're going to go with it was intentional, but yes, having motion detecting lights away from the apparatus bays. So anything that's coming off the engines when you're backing them in or pulling them out, you're not getting any of the diesel fumes. And then obviously the sunlight is critical. So, and this kind of leads all into the station design specialty area. So some of the very easy things that you can do, even if you can't retrofit a station, the very first thing is taking gear storage out of the apparatus bays and having a dedicated area away from the apparatus bays for storing the gear.
That's good.
Even if
That's one thing that we do have. That's good.
good. And if you don't have that, if you're at a station that you can't move it anywhere, have a shed out back and, store the gear in the shed. Take your ice machines out of the apparatus bays. Don't have an ice machine because, again, the diesel fumes. We would tour stations as we were working with a client. I would grab a cup of ice out of the ice machine and let it melt while we were touring the station. And 9 times out of 10, when we were done and the ice was melted, I could hold up the cup and see a sheen on the water. And that was the contaminants from the diesel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough to put them off.
What about your living quarters? Do you have carpeting or is it all hard surface floors?
So it's a bit of a mix actually. In the hallways, and so in the hallways it's hard surface, and in the kit room and like the BA cleaning room, for example, it's hard surface. But then if you go into like the offices and the dorm and the kitchen, so we've got like a kitchen slash sort of living area, which is half and half. So you've got carpet in the living area and then hard surface in the kitchen. But yeah, all the offices are all carpet.
Okay.
So it's they're gonna
we typically recommend hard
hold
surfaces everywhere.
contaminants, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my last station had a lot of carpets that had been down for probably about 20 years, I think.
No telling what's in those.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so how much do you all love your leather accessories?
Yeah, I would say there's a few that are quite attached to them. Yeah.
Leather is treated with tannins, which are carcinogenic, and leather cannot be readily cleaned. So everything that you're exposed to goes into whether it's a leather radio strap or leather suspenders.
Right. So I was thinking more leather recliners. That's where I was kind of thinking.
No. I'm talking about like...
Right. I'm trying to think of, we used to have, our helmet lining used to be leather. It's not anymore, fortunately. It's like a fabric, canvasy fabric material now. Probably don't have a lot of leather pieces of kit anymore, actually.
Good.
Yeah. Don't think we do.
Because that's terrible for you.
Yeah.
And here in the U.S., they love their leather helmets. So trying to
Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah.
That could probably be a whole nother very engaging conversation. Is just the U.S. trying to look at the European style helmets and get away from our traditional helmets.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
they're.
firefighters that are going to die on that sword. They're not going to give those up.
Yeah, I bet there are. I bet there are. Yeah.
So, so if you look at basically trying to control the contaminants, when you come back to the station, I like to see a design where there is a decon room. You're going to enter into that room. You're going to leave your dirty kit there. There's a direct way into a shower area where you can access your locker and clean clothes. And then that way you're completely decontaminating before you're going back into your living quarters at all.
Yeah, that would be for us perfect. Unfortunately, we haven't got that kind of layout, but that makes a lot of sense.
Well, hopefully the new stations, as they design them, we call it either a hot, warm, cold design or a red, yellow, green design.
Okay.
So the architectural firm that I work for, we were one of the first companies in the United States to start to implement that type of design to control the contaminants. Yeah. So setting up your decon room properly to include, do you all do your own washing of your turnout, your kits?
No, we don't. They get sent away for professional cleaning. So we bag them up and we basically leave them for an external company that will come and collect them and take them away and clean them and then bring them back a couple of weeks later or whatever it is.
Okay. So do you all have 2 sets of turnout gear?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Do you have 3 or just 2?
Some people might have 3. Officially, we have 2.
Okay. U.S., there's many departments here in the U.S. that only have 1 set of gear.
Yeah, I can't believe that. That's bad, that.
Yeah. So you guys that is one area then that you're doing much better than the United States with. So as long as you can get your turnout gear cleaned, you are showering. Do they take you out of service and give you, a couple of hours to go back and clean up, or could you be getting back-to-back calls?
Yeah, so I guess it would depend on the level of contamination, really. If it's, for us, say, if we're lightly contaminated, if it's, I mean, if you're contaminated, aren't you? But there's still a bit of a reluctance to take the pump out of service if it's kind of not that bad, if you like. So if we're heavily contaminated, yeah, the kit will come off, it'll get bagged up, it'll go in a locker, and we call it off the run, basically out of service. So we'll be off the run until we get back, and then we'll have a shower and we'll clean up. It wouldn't be a couple of hours. You'd probably be talking from leaving the job to getting back to station and back on the run. I would say you'd probably aim for under an hour, really.
Okay.
But if, like I say, if you're not that, you'd probably stay on the run, really. If you're not that contaminated, it would depend on the level. But again, it's quite hard to assess how contaminated you are, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's just it. You never know. And car fires are some of the worst, most toxic fires that are out there. They're horrible, especially EV fires now.
yeah, that's something
Are you
becoming
guys
more prevalent.
I was going to say, are you starting to see a lot of lithium-ion battery fires?
Yeah, we are seeing more of them, to be honest, and we've had a new procedure coming recently for attendance at EV fires, and we've got like a monitoring phase to make sure it's not gonna ignite, and then we've been made aware of the gases that'll come off the batteries, and so it kind of, especially if you look at RTCs, car accidents, it's kind of changed our approach to that as well. If there's an EV involved in the incident, even if it's not on fire, it kind of completely changes the way we approach it, really. But in terms of contaminants, I don't think there's any difference to how we would approach it in terms of decontamination, but definitely PPE that we would wear. Yeah.
I'd be curious to know how the company that you use to clean the gear handles it, because lithium-ion fires those contaminants can be sometimes more difficult to remove in just a standard wet wash. They contain a lot of heavy metals. And so sometimes those are very challenging to remove with traditional cleaning procedures with turnout gear.
Right. So, yeah. So I guess, let's say we've attended a fire involving an EV. The kit would go off for cleaning just exactly the same way as it would for anything else. There would be no way for the cleaning company to even know that it had been involved in a fire involving a lithium-ion battery, to be honest.
That may be something that you all need to look at. If gear comes to my facility, we always want to know if it's been involved in a lithium-ion fire, because our procedures are a little bit different, and there's new technologies that are coming out here in the United States. We just had the Fire Department Instructor Conference, FDIC, which is our Mac Daddy conference over here. It's the biggest conference we have.
Yeah.
And there was one extractor manufacturer that showcased a new machine and detergent that they have that is specifically for lithium-ion fires, to remove those contaminants. And our new standard that's coming out will include an optional testing procedure for lithium-ion fires, because there are some differences in it, and it does take a little more work to remove those contaminants.
Right. Wow. Do you know what? Not even occurred to me that, to be honest.
Just
Yeah.
one more thing to be worried about, right?
Yeah. I'll just add it to the list. Yeah.
Well, and there's so many things that you can do. And I have a lot of people say, well, my department's not going to do this or they're not going to do that. What can I do individually? You can start by making sure you are getting a physical and you're doing cancer screenings. Does your department or does the FBU provide screenings for you?
Nope. So we have a 3-year medical, which just looks at your basic sort of health statistics. So, we do your weight, your blood pressure, your eyesight, your hearing test, all that kind of thing. A drug test. I think it's kind of more aimed around making sure that we're fit to ride a fire engine rather than looking at long-term health issues. It is something that we're pushing for at the moment. So alongside the presumptive legislation, which I think if that comes in, that will influence, I think, the level of screening we get. And we are pushing for health screening and long-term health monitoring as well, because that's something that isn't currently in place now. So if we wanted to be screened for certain types of cancer, we would have to go to our doctor, but we'd need symptoms to be present before they would look at it, really. So,
well, and that's unfortunate, because obviously when you can catch it earlier, the rate of treatment and recovery is so much higher. I ended up starting a nonprofit back in 2018. I got an online order for $1,200 worth of wipes, which was a lot of wipes for an online order. And it was from a civilian email address. So I'm thinking, why is a civilian buying $1,200 worth of wipes?
yeah.
That was a lot of wipes. So I emailed her and I said, thank you so much for your order. If you're putting together a decontamination protocol for a department, I would love to provide you with some standard operating procedures and some other things, just let me know. And she emailed me back and said, thank you so much. I did a fundraiser. I'm donating these wipes to my hometown department in honor of my cousin who died from occupational cancer. And I was like, oh, gosh, okay, tell me more. And here's 25% of your money back. And it turned out that I knew who her cousin was. We had a mutual friend. So Josh Carney was the battalion chief for Midway Fire Rescue in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. And in about January of 2017, he used to shave his head. And so he noticed he had 3 spots on the back of his head, right where his helmet sat, that he thought were ingrown hairs. And so he didn't do anything about them for several months. They didn't get any worse, but they didn't get any better.
Right.
So he finally went to the dermatologist, and the dermatologist said, you need a biopsy. And he sent him in for a biopsy. And in June of 2017, he was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma. Stage 4 melanoma. He was 41 years old.
41.
41 years old. By the time they discovered it, it had already metastasized to 4 places. and he died 4 months later in October of 2017.
God,
Yeah.
that's quick.
Yeah, very quick. And at the time, South Carolina had no presumptive legislation. So he had enough time on the job that he was able to retire the day before he died. He was on hospice care. So his wife got his retirement pay, but that was it. Nothing else. Nothing else. And they had a 16-year-old daughter at the time. So now with presumptive coverage, a lot of our states will help children of the fallen firefighters with college expenses and stuff like that. I told her, I said, I would really love to make a donation monthly in honor of Josh. And so she said, well, let me talk to Josh's widow and see how she feels about that. So we got Lillian Carney involved in the conversation, and we ended up starting Carney Strong Initiative. We ran that for, 2018, 5 years.
Oh, is that no longer running?
No, Lillian made the decision in 2023 to retire the organization.
Right.
Because part of what her goal was to get the presumptive coverage. And she ended up testifying before the state of South Carolina, their legislature.
Yeah.
And in part because of her testimony, they passed the coverage.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. So what we did for 5 years was every year we would make a donation, but just as important was doing the education, because what Lillian said was neither she nor Josh knew that they were at an increased, or he was at an increased risk of cancer. And she said, had she known, she would have made him go to the doctor sooner.
Yeah, yeah.
So our goal was to provide educational materials and supplies to small rural and volunteer departments that may not otherwise be able to afford them. So
That's great.
I think
What a
we ended
great
up
thing to do.
donating to over 50 states. I can't remember exactly how many donations we made, but we did retire the organization in 2023. I now have the pleasure of working with a new organization called the Phoenix Project, which was started by another widow, Christy Burgess. Her husband, Nathan, died of cancer in November of 2023. He left behind, I want to say they have 3 or 4 children under the age of 12, young kids. Yeah. So it's an issue, and people don't understand. One of the hardest things that I've had to deal with, so the gear cleaning company that I have here in Florida, I was working with a local department that was trying to implement annual gear maintenance. I teach a class, and Chief Luke Kimmig came to the class. He was trying to set up the process. We started it. We did the first 2 rounds of gear cleaning, and I think it ended up costing way more than they were expecting because they had not kept up with maintenance, and they stopped what they were doing. That was in September of 2023 also. And a couple of months later, Luke went out on medical leave, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And he had 5 children, all young children, and he was in his early 40s. And Luke passed away earlier this year, end of last year. I don't remember exactly.
Right.
But here was the person that was trying to fix it for the department. And
That's
he
sad.
ends up getting cancer and dying.
And he was the one pushing it and driving it.
Yes.
And
yes. And he was very healthy. He ate healthy. He was athletic. The last person you would expect.
Yeah, and then I guess it's, the things that potentially that he was exposed to at work have contributed to that, haven't they? And yeah.
So it's really, I'm so passionate about getting the education out there and making sure that people understand this risk, because it doesn't just impact the firefighter. It's the families that they leave behind.
And that's such an important part of it, is the education. It's probably the most important part of it, to be honest, is the education and making sure people are aware of it. And, I say to people, if you don't want to do it for yourself, do it for your kids or for your wife, or do it for your colleagues' kids.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing, too. They have done some studies. The Rand Company did a study, or they researched how much money would be saved if they reduced firefighter cancer morbidity and mortality. And I can't remember the exact figure, but it was significant. So if you can reduce the number of cancer cases in the fire service, not only are you morally, helping out the fire service and fire personnel, but you're reducing overtime because now you've had a firefighter that's out on leave, medical leave, and people are having to cover shifts. You're having to hire new people and train them for a firefighter that's died. You're paying death benefits. You're, paying medical bills. So reducing firefighter cancer mortality and morbidity has an economic benefit way beyond the morality of keeping those who are risking their lives for us safe and healthy. So it shouldn't be just about keeping you safe and healthy. There is a monetary advantage to doing it as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you've brought that up, actually, because it's just made me think, we take a preventative approach to fires, don't we? And we've driven down the level of fires. I mean, some people say, we're doing ourselves out of a job, but we've got to do that. And, we should be taking the same approach to health and taking a preventative approach to firefighters falling ill, because
Absolutely.
in the long run, yeah, it's gonna pay off, isn't it, in the long run?
It is. And that's why doing cancer screenings and physicals and, everything like that, it's critical, because the earlier you can catch it, preventing it's ideal. But it's interesting because there's some research here in the US around epigenetics and why some firefighters can be exposed to the exact same toxins as another firefighter, and one gets cancer and one doesn't.
Right.
And that all has to do with genes, and ones that will turn off and ones that will turn on. And that's way above my pay grade.
Right.
I don't understand it.
So the different genetics, so let's take two firefighters, it might be that one firefighter is more susceptible to a certain type of cancer than another firefighter, basically, just because of their genetic makeup.
Exactly.
Right.
And you can't predict that. So really, it's a matter of doing everything that you can, since you don't know which side of the genetic equation you're going to fall on, doing everything that you can to prime yourself to stay healthy. You just, again, like you said, not just for you, but for your family, for your colleagues, for your community. And nobody wants to go through cancer treatment. I promise you, it is 1,000 times worse than anything you could ever imagine.
I bet it is. Yeah.
What is the cancer rate over there among firefighters? Do you know?
So there was a study done recently, joint study commissioned by Fire Brigades Union with University of Central Lancashire. I think it's a few years ago now. Basically, they surveyed 10,000 UK firefighters, and I think the statistics that came out of it were something like 4% of serving UK firefighters either have or have had cancer, and obviously that was 10,000. So I think that's maybe a quarter of how many firefighters there are in the UK, maybe a little bit less. Didn't take into account retired firefighters, so I don't know how accurate it is really. I would imagine that it's higher than that, really. And I know firefighters, unfortunately, that have had cancer and that have died from cancer. I think I was having a look on your website earlier, actually, on thinredlinedecon.com, and you actually said something that hit the nail on the head. It's nearly impossible to find a firefighter that doesn't know somebody that's had or has cancer, really.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, while I don't know the exact statistics, that's kind of gives you a vague idea. I think it's higher. I think it's higher in the US, isn't it?
So the statistic in the US is US firefighters have a 9% greater risk of being diagnosed with cancer than the general population, and a 14% greater risk of dying from cancer than the general population. And there's particular cancers that you see higher rates on: testicular, prostate, multiple myeloma, Hodgkin's non-lymphoma, things like that. So those have an even higher rate. One of the understudied groups is women firefighters, female firefighters. So breast cancer, cervical cancer, uterine cancer. I don't think we have really accurate results on those statistics right now. But one thing that they are starting to see, and research is backing this up, is not just higher rates of cancer, but also neurological diseases such as Parkinson's disease, ALS, and then birth defects among children of firefighters.
Right. Okay.
So again, if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for your family. And, when you look at diseases such as ALS and Parkinson's disease, cancer is horrific enough, but then you add something like that and the long, slow, debilitating death from one of those. And I mean, who wants that? No.
Yeah, it's pretty scary,
and you can
really,
do
the thought
something
of it.
about it.
Yeah. I think that's it, isn't it? That's the main thing. It's like, yeah, it's not a guarantee, is it, that you're going to be able to stave something off, and it's not a guarantee that you're going to get something, but you're going to massively, massively reduce your risk by putting all these things in place. And how long does it take?
It's not that hard.
No, it's not, is it? It isn't.
No.
What's it going to take you after a job? 20 minutes, maybe?
If that.
Yeah. It's nothing, is it, really?
So what's the holdup? Why are people, again, is it just changing the culture, the mindset?
I think that's a massive part of it, I think. I mean, the last few years, there's been a bit of a shift. When I joined 15 years ago, and it wasn't even a conversation then. It literally wasn't even discussed. I don't think I didn't, I had no idea about the risks that I was taking on when I joined the job. I'm not saying I would have made a different decision, but I think it's good now that recruits are being made aware of the risks, and they're being made aware of what they can do about them. I think that's the main thing, is that they're made aware of the risks, and we tell them that it's not the end of the world. You don't have to be scared. It's not to terrify you. It's to let you know that this is what you're taking on and this is what you can do about it. And I think that's a big thing over here, is getting people to change the way they approach it. Really, I imagine it's the same over there.
And I wonder sometimes, too, what would happen if we educated the spouses more? Would they have an influence on their husband or wife?
I think, yeah, a lot, definitely. I think that would make a massive difference, really, yeah.
Not only just encouraging their husband or wife to go get checked, and to, like in Lillian's case, she probably would have made Josh go in sooner, but also in not bringing home dirty turnout gear. And, I actually have a lot of wives that will buy wipes and wash for their husbands individually because the fire station won't buy it for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome that they're doing that. That's great. I mean, it's bad that the stations haven't got them, but that's awesome that the partners are taking those steps to protect the husbands and the wives, and that's great.
But I would love to see what would happen if we made a concerted effort to educate the partners, and how much influence they would have, and whether we could help change the culture, if you do that. And how many of them actually understand, like I said, that there could be a risk to their children? I don't think very many people do understand that.
No, I don't actually. I think they think that they're putting themselves at risk, and they're okay with that because they put themselves at risk in other ways.
Right.
And especially, the ones that have been doing it for a while already, and they think, well, I've been doing it like this for 20 years. I've only got 5 years left. Why bother? And I think if they knew the impact they were having on potentially having on the children, I think they would. I think they would change.
And I think the other thing too, I hear that all the time. Oh, well, if I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to get cancer. Nothing I can do about it now. Well, here's the thing though. You have an influence on those new firefighters that are coming up under you and are modeling your behavior.
Yeah.
So
definitely,
if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for them, so that they get to live a long and healthy life, and that's one of the things that I talked about in the article on changing habits. It has to be a top-down and a bottom-up approach. You cannot get a department to change the culture if the administration is not willing to support that change in culture, but you also have to have everybody from the ground up willing to make the change. And there's no one, at least in the United States, that has more influence on a fire scene than the company officer. So if they're not modeling the behavior, I guarantee you a rookie is not going to turn around, oh, give me some wipes, and the captains are, oh, what do you need those wipes for, boy? It's not going to happen. So it has to be buy-in from both ends of it, or it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, our retirement age now is 60. So, you take a 20-year-old, they've got 40 years ahead of them. That's huge. And if they go into it from the very start thinking, right, this is what I'm going to put in place, this is how I'm going to take care of myself, I think the difference when they come out at the end of that 40 years is going to be enormous, really.
Absolutely. Well, and here's the thing, too. My co-founder who started Responder Wipes with me, he started in the fire service in the late 80s, and they weren't using nitrile gloves at the time. HIV wasn't the huge deal that it is now. And he said, the bloodier we were, the better. Nobody wore gloves. He's like, now we wouldn't be caught dead with them. He says, I keep them in my pocket. I keep them in my car. I keep them in my desk. I literally have them everywhere. So, and I think it's going to, but it took a generation to change that. Where now it's just a habit. You don't even think about it. First thing you're doing, on medical calls, pulling on the gloves. I think it's going to take a generation. And when you can start at the academy and teach them when they are just coming into the fire service and not let them know that there's any other way of doing it, but teach them from the very beginning, this is how you do it. They're going to grow up with it. And then I think you will have a new generation that is a healthier fire service.
I think you're right. I think in 10, 20 years' time, it's going to look so different. And I think we're going to look back on the way we do things now and the way we used to do things and just be absolutely horrified, I think, really.
Well, it's like SCBA. I mean, what do they used to breathe through their shirt and,
Yeah, car fires, I remember when I joined, one of the instructors said, yeah, we didn't wear beer for car fires. We just used to hold our breath. Yeah.
What is the rate of using tobacco over there?
Do you know what? It's declined a lot, actually.
Has it?
Yeah, massively. Even in the last 10 years, I think. I think when I first joined, there were quite a few of the older guys that had already done a bit of time that smoked. Whereas now, I mean, you get a bit of vaping and that now, I think. But I think my station, so how many firefighters we've got on my station, I think there's about, if you take all 4 shifts, something like 46, 48 firefighters on my station. And I think there's maybe 2 or 3 out of that smoke.
Okay.
So,
good.
Yeah, it's declined massively, I think.
That's one of the things with our presumptive coverage over here. You are excluded if you use tobacco at all.
Really?
Yep.
So you're not covered by it?
Yep.
Wow. Right.
Yep.
That should be an incentive for people to stop, shouldn't it?
Exactly. Whether it's smoking or using, chewing tobacco, smokeless tobacco.
What about if you're a former tobacco user, but you've quit? Is that a grey area?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. And I think it may depend on state by state, but it's still, I think there is some allowances. Maybe I think it's maybe 5 or 7 years that you haven't smoked.
Right. Okay.
So,
yeah.
And they will test you for it to see if there's nicotine in your system. So, but there is a strong push, but I still see a lot of it. And honestly, 70% of the firefighters in the United States are volunteers. And so that's where a lot of the education is lacking, and they're not necessarily held to the same standards. Not all states provide coverage for volunteer firefighters, which I disagree with. If you're a firefighter, you're a firefighter.
So it might be that a state has presumptive legislation, but they only provide that cover for the professional, or the not professional, that's the wrong word to use, the
Right.
paid
But
firefighters?
yeah, I believe that is the case in some of the states. So because they can't control what the firefighters are doing in their normal job, so they could have
Right.
jobs where they're being exposed to carcinogenic materials in a regular job.
I mean, what about, your paid firefighters that might have second jobs?
Yeah.
They might be exposed to things in the second job, or even, hobbies, or
Yeah. Like pesticides, the one that carries.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we operate as 50 independent states here and every state has its own rules. I'm not sure exactly what they all are, but I am 99% sure that there are some states that you're only covered if you're a career firefighter. So, and again, that represents, only about, I think it's about 26% of our firefighters here in the U.S. are actually full-time
Right. Is
paid.
that all?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, it's similar here, to be honest. Because we have what we call whole time and on call. Used to be
Right.
retained,
Yeah.
on call retained. You still get paid for it, but it's like your second job.
Right. Paid on call.
Paid on call, yeah.
Yeah.
And then whole time is effectively it's your full time job, and you work shifts basically.
Yeah.
But I think we're probably something like 2/3 are about 2/3 are on call. I think something like that.
Okay.
So it's not massively different.
Well, and another slow change that's happening here in the United States is the shift schedule. So right now, I would say the majority of our paid firefighters are 24 hours on, 48 hours off. And there's some push to go to 24/72. And so we have 3 shifts, ABC, and that requires going to ABCD, but they are seeing some significant health benefits when they switch to 24/72.
Yeah, I bet they are. I mean, 24 on 42, 48 off. It's not giving you long to recover, that, is it? Really, you're probably, I mean, if you have a busy 24, you've probably barely recovered by the time you go back to work.
Exactly. Exactly.
We have one service that does 24 on 72 off, but mainly we do 2 days, 2 nights, 4 days off, and we have 4 shifts.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Would that be then? So we have a few departments that do 48/96.
All right. So, yeah. So what's that? Effectively 2 days straight, 2 days
Yeah.
on, 4 days off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that works out. That works out the same as what? Is that right? 2 days on, 4 days off. No. So that's still. I think if we were to do that, it would be 48. So 2 days on, 6 days off. I think it
Wow.
would
Okay.
work out, because we've got one service that does 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 5 days off. So we work 48 hours in an 8-day period, if you like.
Wow.
So
Okay,
yeah,
you guys you're ahead of the US on that one then too.
It sounds like it, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't like to go back. I wouldn't like to do that, to be honest. I mean, sometimes if you're busy, if you have a busy couple of night shifts, your first couple of days are a write off, really. I wouldn't want to be going straight back to work.
Again, you're just catching up by the time it's time to go back on. So, and again, that all of those things combined, the shift work, the sleep deprivation, the exposures, diet, all of that went into IARC reclassifying the occupation as a known carcinogen. It's not, and that's the problem. It's synergistic. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 3 and 18 monkeys. You don't know at the time. There's no way to know what that cocktail is going to look like when you breathe it in. So doing anything and everything you can to mitigate the risk, I just struggle to understand why people don't do it. Like you said, not that it's a hero mentality, but it's an acceptance of a higher level of risk. And I think you all think it's not going to happen to you.
And that's exactly it. People think, no, I'll be all right. Well, I've been all right for this long, and people just don't. I think they don't take it seriously. Unfortunately, you know what you do get though. I think when you get people, I've noticed firefighters that have known someone that has had cancer, or they know a firefighter that's had cancer. they do tend to take it more seriously because they've been directly affected by it. I think, yeah.
So then that ties back into one of the things in James Clear's book on atomic habits is can show the negative side of a habit sometimes, and that can help prevent it. So Boston Fire Department has an abnormally high level of cancer in their department.
Right. I wonder why that is.
They were very slow to adopt things. I mean, even as late as the 90s and early 2000s, they weren't wearing hoods. So they just were very slow to adopt some of the necessary protocol. But when Joe Finn was the fire commissioner in Boston, he really made a huge push to do an education. And they did what's called the Boston Memorial Wall. And they plastered a wall with black and white pictures of all of the Boston firefighters that have died from cancer. And there's a short documentary or a short video about it. And it's the spouses coming up and putting the picture of their spouse, their fallen spouse, up on the wall. And when you see that and you see all these spouses and then you see this giant wall with all of these people on here, it's like, whoa. And so I was going to ask you or make a suggestion that if there's any departments out there that have a fire service member that has been diagnosed with cancer that would be willing to go on video and talk about their diagnosis, their treatment, and their prognosis, a lot of times people will not make a change until it impacts them directly or very closely, somebody they know. And so hearing from someone in the department rather than somebody in a different department, sometimes that can have more influence on them. And some people don't want to have that discussion. Some don't want to go on video and talk about it, but there are some that do because they don't want it to happen to any of their colleagues.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
if you can get somebody to talk about it, then there's a good chance that they will have a positive influence on changing the behavior.
Yeah, I bet they would. Yeah.
So many things you can do, but so many ways you can change the culture too. And it has to start somewhere. And I really applaud you, James, for taking the leap on doing the podcast because it's people like you who want to make a difference. And you do that by just starting, what's the saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you do.
So.
No, well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. And same to you, for all the work that you're doing and taking the time to come and speak to me and, share your message over here. I do really appreciate it. And I appreciate everything that you're doing for the fire service in general.
Well, thank you. I hope some of it translates. I know UK and US are not always exactly the same, but unfortunately, I think we share a lot of the same bad habits.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Unfortunately, yeah. Standout moments of your career. Have we kind of touched on that anywhere, really, or was there anything that you wanted to talk about?
Let's see. I would say my mission is to leave the fire service better than when I found it. And having the opportunity to work with Lily and Carney on Carney Strong Initiative and now Christy Burgess on the Phoenix Project, I think those are probably two highlights. Even though they were born from tragedy, it has been one of the greatest pleasures of my life being able to help them make a difference. So I would say that. And then I really love it when I've had the opportunity to speak at several conferences now. And I spoke at a conference back in March, Fiero PPE Symposium, and then I was at FDIC last week. And I had two guys from the Cincinnati Fire Department come up to me and they said, "We heard you speak at Fiero. We have so many questions for you. Can you spend a few minutes talking to us?" I'm like, absolutely. And so it was just kind of a rapid fire conversation. Well, what do you think about this? Well, have you seen this? How could we do this? And I absolutely get reinvigorated when I get to talk to people that want to make a difference. And these two guys were all about it. They were, mid-level in their careers. Neither of them were chiefs. And they were all about, how do I make my department a better department? And I get so much satisfaction from that. I had the opportunity. So Oklahoma City Fire Department saw me speak last year at Fiera PPE and approached me and asked me if I would come do some consultation for them. They were seeing some premature degradation of their turnout gear and they wanted to figure out why. So they had me come out and I did a top to bottom review of their program, their NFPA 1851 program, and then provided a report. Well, before I even finished my on-site visit, I sat down and kind of did a debrief with them. And I didn't even have the report yet. And they're like, this was money well spent, just the information that I was able to give them back. And they're implementing now almost everything that I suggested in the report. So I love, love, love when I see departments that want to make a change and are willing to. And even on days when I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall, then I'll remember, okay, I made a difference for this department. And I know Carney Strong and Phoenix Project made a difference. And so it makes it worth it. It is scary. I didn't start the first company until just before I turned 50 years old.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's a little scary, being a single parent and taking the leap of faith to start a business like this.
Yeah.
Do not regret it one bit, and I absolutely love what I'm doing.
That's amazing. Well, hats off to you, and I've got a lot of respect for you for doing that, because a lot of people wouldn't even consider making a change like that. If they've been doing something, they've already got a career. A lot of people just stick with what they're doing, don't they? Because they're afraid of taking a jump.
I was pretty successful at the architectural firm. It was a huge jump.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, yeah, thank you for
it's leaving a legacy for my kids, too. And I'm fortunate enough that one of my daughters works for me now. And my son-in-law will be joining us in about a month and a half as my general manager. So I love making it a family business.
That's great.
So,
yeah, that's
do you have kids?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
No.
I was going to say,
not yet.
How would you feel if one of your children decided to follow you in the fire service?
I probably have mixed feelings about it, to be honest. I'd be happy, but there'd definitely be some things that I would want to warn them about. I'd be happy about it. But yeah, I think by then it'd look very different anyway, I think, wouldn't it?
Well, not only are there health issues, but the mental health aspect of it. So one thing we didn't talk about, I don't come from a fire service background, but I come from a first responder. So my stepdad was a police officer.
Okay.
And then I married an Air Force Special Operations aviator. So he flew AC-130 gunships. So I've been around first responders all my life.
Yeah, it's a similar culture, isn't it?
It is. It's a camaraderie. And so when I got to work with the fire service, it felt very familiar to me. And maybe that's part of why I want to give back so much is I've been around this for a long time. And I see the sacrifices that not only the member makes, but the family makes as well. And being able to help families overall by keeping the firefighter healthier really is important to me.
Yeah, that really shows through what you're doing. So, yeah, it definitely comes across.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I applaud you for trying to spread the good word and fighting the good fight. I know sometimes it feels like an uphill battle, but it's important and somebody's got to do it. So thank you for taking up the banner.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming on. So what's next for you then?
Oh gosh, just growing both of the companies. FDIC again was kind of reinvigorating. You kind of get stale after a little while. So when you get to go back up and make new connections and see old friends, it kind of gets me excited again about what the opportunities are. And the turnout gear cleaning business is growing. That's why I'm bringing my son-in-law along. We're in the process of purchasing a building so we can move and grow. We've seen exponential growth with that company, and I'm really excited about that. There's new technologies out there that we're looking at. So here in the United States, we call them independent service providers, ISPs. Those are our cleaning facilities. We are independent of any gear manufacturer. And this new facility, when we move into it, hopefully in August, I want it to be a state-of-the-art ISP. I want it to be an ISP of the future of what other ISPs should be modeled after. So I'm working with researchers on ways to set up our facility so that we can provide first-rate, world-class customer service for gear maintenance.
That's great. That sounds great. Yeah. So you're definitely you're paving the way and setting the standard and setting the bar high by the looks of it, which is how it should be done.
I agree. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to get the word out, and I'm always happy to help in any way I can.
Yeah, thank you. Before you disappear, have you got a book, documentary, or movie recommendation?
Atomic Habits. We already talked about it. Yeah,
Great,
absolutely.
Great. Let's stick that on there. And where can people reach you? I know I've been on the website, and you've got a lot of resources on there. And I would definitely direct people to thinredlinedecon.com because there's a lot of resources in there that people can have a look at. But where can people reach you if they want to get in touch with you for any advice or?
I'm on LinkedIn, so Tonya Herbert, if you look for me on LinkedIn. You can also email me at Tonya, Tonya, at thinredlinedecon.com. I'm happy to share the articles. I've written several articles. I've got some studies. I'm happy to share studies, standard operating procedures, anything like that I can do. Send me an email or look for me on LinkedIn or any one of we are on Instagram and Facebook, both for Thin Red Line Decon and Florida PPE Services. So find me on one of those and I'm happy to help. I will spread the information. One thing I do recommend too, if you have the opportunity to attend any of the conferences in the United States, I highly recommend Science to the Station. That one is put on by Dr. Sarah Jenke and her group at NDRI. And that's all about how to take what research and science is showing and how to translate that to the station. And so that's all real world practical research being translated to real world use. So that conference will be in November in Loveland, Colorado. Highly recommend that one if you have an opportunity. I don't know if they'll have it where you could attend virtually, but if you can, that's the way to do it.
Interesting. That might be worth looking at.
So a lot of times our conferences here in the U.S., they will have a virtual attendance option. I believe the Florida Safety and Health Collaborative has done that for their health and safety conference in the past. And I believe the University of Miami, the International Firefighter Cancer Symposium, had an online option as well.
Right.
So,
okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you. It's been really informative and really enjoyable, and I think people will get a lot out of it. I certainly have. So thank you for taking the time and out of your day and coming on. Really appreciate it.
And it's fun. It's nice to finally meet you face to face after being in touch virtually for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mutual, definitely. Thank you for that. Yeah. And
thanks, James.
I'm sure we'll touch base again. Thank you, Tonya. Appreciate it, and I will speak to you soon.
Sounds good.
Have
a good
day. Take
day.
care. You too. Thank you.